Hey Jim, Mike LeBeau here again with another recap of your incredible improvement. We've had the lesson on the left. This was the first swing that you made for me down the line. First of all, before you made this swing, if you remember, you showed up on the tee, and I had a professional friend of mine that I had just given a lesson to, and you came walking up with your golf bag and your iPad and a notebook. And I mentioned to my friend, check out what we have now. And which kind of gave me an idea of how you learned. And you had told me the methods you had been working on, and this was your swing on the left. And so needless to say, you were not having much success. As you can see, this is pretty steep coming down, and you had no power and a pull and some fades. This one you actually topped it. And so I started asking you a few questions about what other sports you had played, and come to find out, you were the quarterback in high school, you were the pitcher in high school, you were a very good tennis player, and so I proceeded to ask you if you had learned playing quarterback, from a book, and you said no. Did you learn to pitch from a book? And you said no. And I said, did you learn how to play tennis from a book? And you said no. Well, yes, but mostly just mental stuff, which is fine. But so I said, well, let's not learn golf from a book. It's okay to get some information from a book or articles or things that you hear, but really you have to start looking at the motion and figure out what's wrong with your impact and start from there. This was your swing from face on, and everything looked pretty good. Although after that first lesson, we made quite a bit of progress, but I told you I was concerned about your opening of the face as you go back. Here's a good example of when you were coming in where you had no angle in your wrists to produce any kind of power on the golf ball. And you can see as you go through, your left arm never wants to bend and let the right arm roll over, or release, if you will. And then I filmed a chip shot, and you did the same thing chipping. Now, it's not that you can't chip like this. Obviously, you could, but this is a lot of motion for a little bitty short shot, and as you can see, zero hand action. And again, if we go back to all those sports, you didn't play those sports with zero hand action. So the first thing we did, since you told me you were a baseball pitcher and you could hit, this is the first swing I had you make for me, and here's a baseball swing, and as soon as you did that and you threw a ball for me, I said, now, does anything in your golf swing resemble anything like this? And you said no. And I said, what are you feeling now? And you said, well, I'm feeling my body turn more, I'm feeling my weight shift more, I'm feeling my hands release more, the sequence was better, all the things that you would like to see and feel in a golf swing. Then we started, here's another one. Now, obviously your shoulders are a little bit flat right there, and we modified this a bit, but the arm action right here was totally different than what you felt in the past. And again, this was just in our first hour. And this was your first swing. You can see you rolled it in a little bit open. But this swing plane coming down within 15 minutes was so much better and so much more like your tennis motion, if you will, or your baseball motion. Now you can see you top that ball, and I mentioned that you may top it because you've been coming in so steep that you had to stand up through the ball. On this next one, you managed to stay down in your posture a little better and make contact with a nice looking swing. So we had quite a bit of improvement to start with. Back to the face-on shot, you can see, again, here's the first lesson, and you can see the difference in the arm action going through, which is pretty natural for somebody that's more on plane. You'll tend to get more rotation in the hands and arms, and it'll create a nice little draw. So that brings us to yesterday. We came out for a half hour just to review. And the first thing we started talking about was tennis. And I told you, let's fix this little takeaway going back. So we took the club back more like this, and you dropped it right on plane and right on through. Then, oddly enough, I said, you know what, let's talk about your quarterback motion. And you went through your motion just like dropping back to throw a pass, and this was absolutely perfect. And that's the same sequence you should have in a golf swing. And there's a lot of things about the pivot and the way the arm cocks and rotates that should resemble your golf swing or a batting swing or a tennis shot. And then we moved on to tennis, and you did the same thing with a club, acting like you had a tennis racket. And there's your tennis swing. And interestingly enough, you mentioned that your tennis pro always told you that you hit a flat ball. And so by dropping this a little bit under, like we were doing, your first swing was a little bit too flat, and I had you actually drop this a little bit under the plane so that you could hit a little bit more up on your tennis ball. And it just helps to understand the different sports and how they relate to one another and what you have to adjust for each sport to do it proficiently. So this ought to help your tennis game. Then here we go with the, that brings us to the last couple of swings. And notice now your takeaway is much better. You're dropping the club a little bit in the slot, if you will. And remember this right hand, the only thing I want to remind you about is keeping your hands nice and loose, just like when you went to throw this football. Can you see your right hand right there cocks back? No different than a basketball player shooting a shot. Your right hand is cocked back, and then it uncocks going forward, and you follow through. We need that same cocking motion. When you get ready to start down, you're going to feel that right hand cock back more to allow you to release it more. But your swing plane here is so good, and the exit is so good. It was so good, I had to share this. Let's go back to the original. Again, here you are coming down from the top. Again, learning from a book. And here is your new downswing. To impact. That one's coming from the outside, obviously too steep. And again, one more time, if we run through the takeaway, look at the difference in the takeaways. The one on the right is absolutely neutral. You feel like it's closed. It could even be a little more closed than that. Versus the one on the left, look how wide open you've rolled it. Too flat to start. And just two totally different transitions and two totally different swing planes. I mean, this is fabulous on the right. I haven't seen this kind of improvement in a student in an hour and a half in some time. So it's going to be fun watching your progress. Jim, it was a pleasure getting to know you and meet you, and I'll be waiting to hear about your progress. Best of luck.